Hello and welcome into our very first episode, officially, of A Jew and Muslim Walk Into a Podcast. I am your host, Zach Alexander, here with your other host, Bill Sadish. Bill, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Zach. I appreciate you. Hi, Zach. Hi, crew. It's interesting. We started this podcast a few months ago, and we've kind of gotten our legs back to kind of restart from the beginning. And I just want to state why we started this podcast, who I am. My name is Bill Sadish. I am a young American Muslim with Palestinian and Kashmiri extended family and background. And because of that, I've been very involved in kind of the things that have happened and transpired in the Muslim community in the past year or so since October 7th. A big reason we started this podcast is because we noticed the lack of logic, the lack of common ground, the lack of humanitarian aspects and empathy for both sides of the political and social aisle. And we believe there's a place to find common ground. And unfortunately, we know that a lot of podcasts, a lot of, think tanks, they make a profit off of finding not common ground and looking for conflict and looking to kind of incite flames. Our goal is to do the exact opposite. Our goal is to call out bullshit where we see it, point it out and say, hey, from a humanitarian, from an empathetic standpoint, that doesn't make any sense. And we don't agree with it, or we do agree with it. Especially with the Trump presidency now, I think we have a tremendous amount of content to go over for the next 4 years. And so I'm very happy to be doing this with you again, Zach. And please, feel free to talk more about yourself. To be fair, I am involved in humanitarian work in the medical field and in the charity field. I work with a nonprofit collective action for the diaspora that provides humanitarian ground aid in Palestine, Gaza right now, water wells, medical supplies, food supplies, temporary housing. It is a completely humanitarian, non-political nonprofit. And it's something I've been involved in deeply for the last couple of months. And it's kind of become my passion project on the side. So, Zach, I'm going to let you take it away. Tell us a little more about yourself and how you felt called to this podcast and what we're hoping to achieve with this podcast.
Yourself, man, that's amazing. And I feel like, exactly what you just shared about being in the humanitarian aspect of what's going on is part of the reason that we are on this podcast. My name is Zach Alexander. I am in the spiritual wellness sphere. And so it's kind of funny in a weird way of how Bill and I have linked up and now have created a podcast around political or social commentary. I am also a white Eastern European Jewish man. My family has been in America for a few generations now. And when October 7th happened, we obviously clearly saw a lot of division between Jews and Muslims. Myself, I came into the wellness sphere from a perspective as a trauma healer. And I've worked with veterans, I've worked with therapists and psychologists on exploring the deeper nature of how trauma creates or runs us unconsciously. And I think for us, Bill, I know from my lens, there's a lot of unprocessed trauma with Jewish people. Okay. And I recognize that there aren't even able to have dialogues appropriately around what's going on and what's occurring because it's inflamed and we're not acting from a regulated, grounded space. And I also feel that there's just a huge human element missing in what's going on. Politically, socially, it just seems like a lot of people are regurgitating facts and we're missing the major components of we have a world where we are funding currently a genocide. I actually believe that we have now elected a president who is a fascist. And at this point, even though me and you professionally are in spheres that aren't necessarily political, right? We have to start talking about this stuff and we have to start discussing it in a way that's relatable and human and not just about my argument is right. Look at me and this and that or whatever. We both have spoken that we feel that there's just a lot of emotional immaturity and bullshit in all the stuff and we're not even getting into the truth. I'm going to pass the microphone back to you. And how do you feel right now as we do this podcast on the date is March 8th, 2025, with everything going on in the world?
I'm going to be honest. After October 7th, I felt like a chronic sub-depression just because I knew the collective punishment that was coming for the Palestinian people. And they've endured collective punishment, which ironically, I was taught about my entire life in high school in America, how collective punishment is evil and how we should avoid it because the Jews had to suffer through it in World War II. The irony is beyond me at times, right? And I think it goes back to what you said with that trauma response. When I bring up this topic around any of my Jewish friends, which trust me, I don't usually bring up this topic. It's not really the hot topic to talk about with your Jewish friends.
Yeah, must be a lot of fun for you.
Yeah, rather avoid it. But when you do, it's almost as if logic gets thrown out the door. Empathy gets thrown out the door. And that's usually what happens when someone has suffered a collective or an individual trauma, because they become blindsided and they are fearful of having to live through or share or feel that kind of trauma again. But unfortunately, when you bring up these traumas, the only way to get rid of them is to face them. And I believe you're very right. The Jews in Europe were literally told, hey, you don't belong here, get out. You have a homeland. You're only allowed there, go there. And so when they got there, an alternative to think was this the right move? And if it's not, did we mess up? And we already have all this trauma from Nazi Germany. It makes sense. A lot of people, I say this, I empathize with the Jewish people. I think I finally understand someone with a Muslim background and Palestinian family. It's like you finally understand how that trauma response may feel, because unless your people have been pushed to the brink of extinction or they've been pushed consistently for a period of time, it's hard to say what you would do. Who really has that luxury? Maybe Native Americans, but how many of them are even left to talk to about these experiences? And so it's kind of like, that's where I really feel like we as Americans, American Jews, American Muslims, we have to find common ground. We have to talk about what now is very clearly shared trauma and experiences. And whether the Muslim world or the Arab world wants to realize it or not, they are intertwined into that trauma now.
Yes.
Indefinitely. And to bring it up and to talk about it is only going to start solving the festering wound that has been there all the way since 1939. And so I think it's this kind of common dialogue, you just don't see it. You don't see it because it doesn't sell, right? It doesn't steer controversy. But that's what we're trying to do in a way, because this is unorthodox. You don't see these kind of podcasts. And that's what I'm really hoping we hit on with the topics we discuss, and we kind of see how we might differ, but how we also agree and come to a common place of empathy and humanity, because that is what is severely lacking in the world, and especially this country right now. It's a great way to segue into some of our topics. The Trump administration. Now, I have conflicted feelings about the Trump administration on Palestine. One is, yes, there is a very feeble, low-level ceasefire right now. Believe it or not, less Palestinians are dying than were under Biden. But at the same time, we have a president that's tweeting, Shalom Hamas, we're going to kill, and threatening to kill all Palestinians if Hamas doesn't listen, which just blows my mind. It's collective punishment openly being said. I want to remind people that Hamas is not all Palestinians. Hamas is a political ideology and political party that has the government in play. It's like saying that the Trump administration represents all of America. It's just not true. It's not true. And so to punish a whole population of people because you do not like the actions of the government, we know from history that's not right. And we actually have laws in place to go against that. But I guess all international law as of the last 2 years has been, I'm kind of scared for the precedent that we've set, because who is actually going to be held liable for anything? Right? Like, we look at right now with Ukraine and Russia, the way things are going there, is Russia going to be held accountable for anything? Probably not. America is not going to be held accountable for the genocide. Maybe in 50 years we'll apologize and, the president will sign some law saying, oh, Palestinians are allowed to come here or something. But as of right now, it's a bleak spot from foreign policy. But like I said, I'm conflicted because for the last 20 years of my life, I grew up in America. I thought I was a liberal Democrat. I really did. Just to find out that they really didn't give a damn about us. And a lot of people don't realize this past election, it wasn't the people versus Donald Trump. It was corporate capitalist Democrats against oligarch Republicans. Literally, it was the oligarchy versus the corporations. That's what we saw play out. There was no People's Party. There was no party that cared about the average individual. It was one party that was bought by big corporations with capitalism only first in mind, and then another party that's based on the richest of the richest, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, other rich, influential people. In fact, this this cabinet that's been assembled has the most billionaires in the history of any cabinet in America. It's an oligarchy. It's an oligarchy against a capitalist corporation. And so, like I said, I don't know what to tell you which one's worse, because at the end of the day, kind of the same group of people benefit no matter who was going to win. And that's the rich of America. Let's not forget Lockheed Martin has a stranglehold. The weapons manufacturing industry has a stranglehold on both parties. No matter what happens, those defense contracts are going to get signed. And war is good for business. There's a reason why Joe Biden didn't stop the genocide. He could have. He really could have. We saw it's possible because Donald Trump was able to do it. As much as you want to hate the guy, as much as you want to say, oh, he's a fascist, he's a racist, he was able to flex some power for a short amount of time. Whether it's genuine, I don't know. But what I do know is at this moment in time, less Palestinians are dying. Are they still dying? Yes, they're absolutely still dying. We're not going to even get started on the horrors that are unfolding in the West Bank, but it's interesting to see. I think we were in a lose-lose situation. And what I hope personally was the Democrats took the hit right now and got their shit together. But it looks like that's not happening at all. In fact, they're going more right, and they're electing people like a former Bush administration intelligence officer to take charge of the party. And I think it's time. The way the Democrat Party is going, I think it needs to be dissolved. I think it needs to be washed entirely. And they need to fail. There needs to be a new party that's actually concerned with the average citizen, because the Democrat Party is not that party anymore. At least at its current state, maybe it was at one point, but there was an inflection point somewhere between Barack Obama, even all the way back to Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, leading up to Biden, there's been a monumental shift of corporate capitalist marriage to the Democrat Party. And you saw how quickly, and I'm going to highlight this before I get your opinion on this, how quickly all the stuff that these corporations promise to value, DEI, all these programs promoting equality, whatever, they just scrap that immediately. They scrapped it immediately because they want to appease the current administration, because they know they'll give them more tax breaks. They'll give them more, incentives of what will benefit their profit. And at the end of the day, that is all these corporations care about. They don't care about diversity, equality, inclusiveness. They will sell your mother in front of you for an extra $1. That's the truth. That is ultra capitalism. And that's why I don't agree with any form of extreme government, whether it's extreme communism, extreme capitalism. We are seeing capitalism fester into oligarchy here, where this 1% has stranglehold. I mean, people can't afford groceries. There's a reason why Donald Trump won, right? They were like, oh, this guy's going to bring the grocery prices down, the gas prices down. Shit's still expensive. Nothing changed.
Yeah.
I think people are just desperate. That's why they keep electing a TV show host billionaire from New York.
Yeah.
And they keep thinking he's going to be the savior. I'm just sorry to say that guy's probably not going to be the savior that you think he is. And I'm genuinely afraid for what comes next, because I'm seeing him cut departments of, the Department of Education, the Department of Environmental Health Protection. And it's like, okay, you're going to cut all that, but where's that money going now? What are you going to do with that money? That's what I'm interested about, because they're like, oh, we're cutting all this money. Cool. Now what's the plan? What are you going to do with it? I haven't heard that part yet. And that's the part that scares me, I
mean, where do I even begin? I think for a lot of people, this is like an immense political awakening that we're all currently experiencing. I think both of us, what you're speaking to, Bill, is the fact that we are very much now aware that neither political party actually works for the people. They work for a different set of corporate interests, tech, sectors, and neither party are actually here to represent the interests of the average American person. The Democrats have clearly left everyone behind, and we're upholding this insane military-industrial complex. And we saw with what occurred with Palestine, how politically that we are so embedded with Israel and our own military, we talked about this military-industrial complex. I don't even know if we can say America is controlled by Israel, because it's this mutual, almost insidious partnership that has now led to not only a genocide, but now Trump's administration is upholding what I believe to be just clear ethnic cleansing policies. The only reason that he got that deal through was because there are some very backhanded agreements with Netanyahu, where now they're going to have more control and more say in America's policy and America's foreign policy, and basically upholding Israel as more of a regional and even global power. We've had some conversations offline about this, but we know how dangerous that is. I really don't like Donald Trump. Okay, I generally do think he's dangerous to American democracy. I think this presidency is very different than what it was in 2016. I also understand that us as Americans are deeply confused, and we're looking for a hero or savior because we don't feel that we have say in what's going on in any capacity. And so we're searching for something outside of ourselves and a narcissistic reality star to uphold that. I just know that, I don't know what it's like for you, Bill, but, you know, I have always felt like a little bit of an outcast. I don't even know how this is fully relevant, but it is. Like, I just always felt like an outcast growing up, even as a Jewish dude in America, and not really fitting into those communities and spaces. And now it's like people from both your and mine background seem to be just a pawns in something that is this political machine ripping through. And I actually think that Trump is upholding that machine even more so, but just in a different direction. What do you think of everything I just stated?
I mean, I agree wholeheartedly with everything you said. I don't know who people thought Donald Trump would be when he got elected, but I don't even think Donald Trump is acting as a president. I think Elon Musk is, honestly. And the problem with people like Elon Musk is they look at bottom dollar value only. They don't look at people. They don't look at a humanitarian lens. They don't look at, was this program actually helping people that need help? They look at, did we save an extra dollar? Who cares whose life was lost? Did we save the dollar? That's what they care about, right? And so I'm telling you, we were, to put this in the nicest way possible, we were fucked no matter who got elected. And I think we knew that going in, right? So when Donald Trump elected, honestly, I wasn't like, oh no, how could this happen? I was literally like, now what? Like, what changes? And the truth is, yeah, things are changing, but are they changing for the better? I don't think so. I don't think so as of yet. I mean, look, I know people personally affected by these Department of Education cuts. I know teachers that offer programs to disabled and young students that are worried, will we have funding to keep helping these disabled and young students? I saw that Elon Musk slashed a program because it had the word transition in there. And he thought it meant something transgender, but it was to help young disabled students transition from high school to working occupations. And he slashed that entire program for close to 91 students, which wasn't that many students to begin with. Yeah. But my point is, this is the kind of lack of human empathy that you cannot get from capitalist oligarch America. And that's the problem. If you think capitalism is the solvent and the cure for everything, I'm sorry, you're wrong. Now, I'm not here saying I'm a communist. I think that's wrong too, right? I'm not a communist either. We can see how horrible that can go with 1980s Russia, but you have to strike a balance. It's like the Force, right? It's a light side, there's a dark side. And I always thought those movies got it wrong, okay? I always thought Star Wars was kind of missing the point. That's why they keep making more Star Wars, because they all keep missing the point. If you go too much to the light side, shit goes bad. If you go too much to the dark side, shit goes bad too. So how do you balance that? Find it in between. And believe it or not, and this is getting kind of nerdy, but this is what makes the podcast fun. Episode 8, which was The Last Jedi, which got the most flack out of all the Star Wars movies. People hated it because it went away from the norm. I thought it was actually a great piece of work because it did something unconventional. At the end of the movie, Rey, who represents the light side, and Adam Driver, I can't even remember his real name in the movie, but Adam Driver, the actor, whoever he's playing, who represents the dark side, decide, you know what? Fuck this light side, dark side shit. Like, let's just have a conversation. Let's team up and then solve things from there. That's literally how the movie ended. And people hated it because they couldn't stand that maybe life isn't so black and white. Maybe life is gray. And the true balance of the Force was finding an in-between, because the only reason we keep making movies is because too many extremes on each side doesn't work. And I really do think that's how life is. You can't go to two extremes on either side. Just like government, ultra-capitalism is bad, Ultra-communism is bad. So what do? You find a middle ground that still cares for average people, but also is fair and equitable and able to, you're still able to become someone and make money. But if we have a system, the current system is set up for the average American to fail. And that's true. And I don't even know why we're paying taxes right now, because they've cut all the programs, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, Department of Education, whatever, all of it's getting cut. So why are we paying taxes? I'm genuinely interested. Like, we should stop right now. Whoever's watching, I'm not encouraging you to stop paying taxes, but I want you to start thinking, why are we paying taxes still? Like, I have to file my tax return, and I'm like, why are we giving taxes at this point if we're getting zero kickback? And let's kind of segue. I want to get your opinion on that, but I also want to talk about kind of the topics we talked about with Trump's policies as we've moved in. Trump was supposed to be seen as this liberator. No more alliances, no more just indebtedness to foreign countries. But we just saw he slashed $400 million to Colombia, which I thought he did in a very unprofessional way, because he tweeted out the words, "Shalom, Colombia. We're cutting $400 million. Which, I'm sorry, bro, that is bad for the Jewish identity. Trump, first of all, should not be saying shalom anything. The United States Constitution says there shall be no establishment of religion, period. I'm sorry, if I was a young Jewish American, the last thing I would want Trump to say is shalom on my behalf. Or if I was a young Muslim, last thing I want Trump to tweet is salam, Colombia. Oh, it's just kind of like, what is going on here? And he's bypassed Congress to send even more money to Israel. Everyone's over here like, yeah, Ukraine, get him. Like, look at him. He was so awesome against Zelensky. And here he is pulling out the chair for Netanyahu, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, is this guy the tough guy we thought he was? Or is he just another pawn who's way in over his head? Look, let me tell you something about people that have any shred of higher education. You can see Trump for who he is. Trump is a very good con man businessman. That's how he's ran his whole life. Until this point right now, he is playing the same game. He's going to oversell everything he gives you and then under-deliver big time. That's how businessmen work. And to think he's doing anything different right now, I'm sorry, you're an idiot. He's a lot of tall promises followed by a lot of lack of action, or the completely opposite reaction. I feel like America is for sale right now to the highest bidder. Unfortunately, that's Elon Musk at this point in time. But who knows who else that will be? I was reading corporations are paying anywhere from $1 million to $5 million to meet Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago just to have a conversation with him.
Yep.
Very impressionable guy. I've heard he'll do whatever the last person in the room told him to do or say. He's older too. I know we got on Biden for being senile. This guy is only 2-3 steps away from that too. He's not that far off, Mr. The population that was like, oh my God, we have a senile president. We have close to a demented president right now too. I'm sorry to tell you guys, like, he's also very old, very run dry. Look, you and I come from rough upbringings, right? We weren't born with silver spoons in our mouths. I grew up in a middle-income class family in America. And you and I both know these people have zero empathy, zero shred of reality for what it is for an average American. You want to tell me that you believe a New York elite East Coast playboy billionaire understands the average concerns and hardships of middle-class rural America? Just listen to what I just said. Like, bro, come on. I heard Barack Obama say this, which, by the way, Barack Obama is also a terrible guy. What I want to say is I heard him say that years ago. Like, you think this guy is y'all's savior? The billionaire playboy? I don't know, man. And now you're getting religious fanaticism mixed in with it. I'm seeing so many Christian Zionists at the top. And I think, Zionism as a whole, people equate Zionism so much with Judaism, which has been done on purpose to victimize, to use the term anti-Semitism for a political end goal. But I think who we truly need to be afraid of are Christian Zionists, because they're much larger than Jewish Zionists. They're much larger than any other Zionist population. And they're the ones who push policy in America. Whether you realize it or not, it's Christian Zionists. They're in control and they want to see the end of the world. Yes, I'm being dead serious. They want to see Jesus Christ come back. But you know what's funny? They've tried this now several times in history. They tried it in World War II. They tried it with the Crusades. They tried it over and over again, and it hasn't happened. And look, I'm not trying to discredit anyone's religion. I'm just saying maybe forceful violence isn't the way that your Lord and Savior or Messiah is going to come back, especially on the blood of tens of thousands of children and women.
I just want to interject here real quick.
Yes, go.
You don't remember the passage in the New Testament where it said, "Thou shalt use U.S. funding and military to murder children to reconnect to a higher power." You don't remember that passage in there? You don't remember that being part of Jesus' teachings?
Well, I guess,
Yeah, this is why I think for myself, like I'm deeply confused, and I think a lot of people are deeply confused because let me just say this. As a Jewish man, I don't like us being used as pawns, and I don't think that Donald Trump actually represents the interests of Jewish people. I think that we have somehow found our way a little bit higher up this hierarchy that exists, right? And when the time comes, like, we will be turned on very quickly.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, if you look, I tried to give Elon Musk benefit of the doubt when he kind of did a salute at the presidential inauguration, but then Steve Bannon, who was the strategist for Trump's first campaign, did another salute. And so we're watching something take hold that at the very least, like, I know my eyes, this isn't good. And so even when Trump is saying that, like, he is, taking funding away, he took $400 million of funding away from Colombia on the basis that they weren't stopping anti-Semitic protests. It's like Jewish people are a pawn again.
Also, I want to interject, and I want you to keep going. I want to also highlight Colombia did every single thing that the Anti-Defamation League and federal officials put pressure on them to do. They fired every person who was critical of Israel. They fired their president. They arrested students. They brought in NYPD to brutalize and hit and hurt students and faculty. Fired everyone. And they still had this cut at the end of the day. Why? Because it has nothing to do with justice and fighting anti-Semitism. It has to do with political ideology and making a spectacle, which exactly like you're saying, using the Jewish people as pawns in a bigger political game. Continue, please.
Well, you're cutting $400 million of funding, and now you're instituting policies on this like narrative of combating anti-Semitism where we can't protest anymore, right? I know Trump used the words illegal protest, but that's a very loose and ambiguous definition. For those watching, he actually tweeted out or on his Truth Social that anyone who participates in quote unquote an illegal protest, like I said, very ambiguous, broad term, will be arrested. And if it's a student on a foreign visa, the visa is revoked. Okay, so we're also now starting to watch the withering away of our democratic rights. You cannot halt people's right to protest. Look, the Democratic Party was carrying out genocide. So it's not like we can sit here on some moral high ground, or anyone on the left can sit here on some moral high ground when speaking out against Trump and his policies on Palestine, right, and our right to protest on behalf about Palestinian sovereignty and freedom, right? But like, this is insane. This is absolutely insane. This is turning into a very like Christian nationalist state. We're seeing Donald Trump kind of focus his attention on upholding more interests around Christian nationalism, which is really funny to me because the man from a moral and ethical perspective seems to be completely contradictory to the values that, Christians uphold. Obviously, I'm a Jew who believes in Jesus. That's a conversation for another time, but it is almost hysterical to me watching Christian nationalists once again use Jewish safety as a pawn to enact really insidious, horrific policies. And Jewish people, like, we are responsible and accountable for ourselves. Like, we're not a victim here. Like, we just legitimately carried out one of the most horrific, atrocious genocides that one can carry out. This is on us. But we have to start stepping out from a broader paradigm and really witnessing what's always been pulling the strings. And we're giving in. And Trump is not working for Jewish people. Trump is certainly not working for Muslim people. The Democratic Party wasn't either. So, yeah, I don't know what we do. I don't know what we do.
I think people don't understand how similar things look to right before World War II. Adolf Hitler, before he decided to, do the Holocaust, he had a similar vision where he wanted every Jew in Europe to move to, guess where? Palestine. He was promoting it. He even went to Palestine to talk to the local sheikh at the time and say, hey, we're going to relocate all these Jews here. And the sheikh was like, no, you just can't do that. There's people living here. He didn't care, right? When he tried to get the logistics, it just didn't work. So what did he do? He decided he was just going to kill all of it, which is the truth. People don't, people forget so much about history, which right now, if you think about it, America is saying, hey, all the Jews need to be allowed over there. And so when it doesn't happen, what's next, right? And it makes you question, we are one step away because Christian Zionism is not friendly to Jewish people because it believes it's going to live in harmony and peace with them in the end. They believe, Christian Zionists, this is 100% their belief system. We want the Jews to return to Zion, to Jerusalem, and build the second temple so Jesus comes back and then kills all of them if they don't convert to Christianity on the spot. So let me ask you, when you have someone that is so willing, when you have a group of people that are so willing to kill women and children to achieve that goal, what makes you think they will not kill you at some point to achieve that goal? That's where Israel as a whole has lost the plot entirely. Because if you look at things from an international relations standpoint, Israel's favorability, credibility in the world is the lowest it's been since its inception. And how is that benefiting Israel on the national stage? How is that benefiting? I was reading the economy is tanked. People are leaving Israel in masses because it's not economical to start a business, to run a business in an area that's constantly at war, And so I think there's a Gallup poll that just came out yesterday that shows that close to 59% of Americans do not sympathize with Israel anymore. It's the highest it's been in the last 50 years. And look,
I'm going to interject, but that's what's crazy because our political administration still deeply supports them, and the support is only getting bigger. Like as you said, we're pulling the funding from Ukraine, but Israel, here you go. I'll pull out the chair for you, Netanyahu, who by the way is considered a criminal,
a war criminal by the ICC,
war criminal in every international court system.
And I saw this monster, Elise Stefanik, who was just promoted as our ambassador to the UN. Literally, the most disgusting, uses Jews as pawns for her whole political career. She made herself famous by grilling those university presidents, got the first Black female president of Harvard fired because of not responding to anti-Semitism when she said, protests are protests. We don't condemn the protest as an act of protest. We condemn anti-Semitism. But it wasn't enough for her to say that. So I just want to point out, these people don't care about the Jewish people. They're using them as pawns to A, further their political career, B, push this sick, perverted ideology, Christian Zionism, down everyone's throats. And what's nuts to me is, because I've heard on the other end, Islamic ideology is so, barbaric and they'll do anything for their religious goals. Bro, I think Christian Zionism has killed more people in the millions, all the way from the last 20 years of wars in the Middle East to achieve their goals, than any other war between Christianity, Islam, Judaism in the past 2 centuries that we have known human life. And so it makes you think, in a way, what exactly is the end goal here? And do they truly, logic has to speak up, right? Like, you can have your religious beliefs. I don't mind. But do you really think you're going to usher in the end of the world? Like, is that what you people really are thinking?
Let's just call it what it is. Like, obviously, there is a huge section of the population in America who are in deep religious psychosis.
Right.
And that's religious fanaticism and fundamentalism. And so this is the issue. We have a huge problem when religion becomes deeply embedded and interwoven into the state. That is why America, was founded on the principles of not being a religious state. And now we're also funding an ethno-state while slowly becoming a new religious Christian nationalist state ourselves. And this is when that fanaticism and that fundamentalism can start controlling and running the world into really nefarious directions. I don't even want to go too far into the Judaism versus Christianity versus Islam. We just know that too much is on the line, and the U.S. was funded on a principle of not devolving into a religious state.
It's literally in our Constitution. Congress make no religion the official religion of the United States. But we have a president that's saying Christian nationalism is here. And it makes me wonder, as a young American Jew and as a young American Muslim, where is our place in that? Where are we in that?
I think there's a hierarchy right now, okay? So I think it goes LGBTQ at the bottom, okay? And then you have Black and Muslim Americans, and then Jews, and then you have Christian Zionist nationalists now at the top. And so I don't want to project fear into people listening into this podcast or anything of this nature, okay? I think it's really just being conscious and aware of some of the hierarchies and even internal caste systems that still exist, and they're playing off of it. Okay.
100%.
And I think Jewish people in a way have moved up this caste system, but we have to recognize that we are still being deeply used at pawns. And when we are no longer needed, like we will be turned against as well, right? That this administration is not working for us. Okay. And this could clearly be seen in the whole Tiki Torch episode, at University of Virginia or whatever.
No,
But
people
like,
are quick to forget that, you know?
but
Quick.
this we've talked about this. Like we know that there is legitimate problems with anti-Semitism, but now anti-Semitism has been weaponized so much, right? That it becomes a boy who cries wolf. And now anti-Semitism is being weaponized by this administration to halt protesting or one's right to protest. And so this is bullshit.
It's a dangerous precedent.
It's an incredibly dangerous precedent because you have an administration that is using government tax dollars to murder kids, to have just wiped out an entire population off the map. But protest where anti-Semitism may or may not lace in, that's where our right to protest stops, right?
And what's nuts to me is, I just want to interject, it's very well played in a way where if shit hits the fan and people are fed up, it's going to be blamed on Jews. It's not going to be blamed on Trump. You see, this is what we're getting at. We're doing anti-Semitism. We're doing this for them.
Yeah.
Guess who's going to get the blowback? It's not going to be him. It's going to be that, which is what he's great at. He's done that his whole life, kind of just, it's his fault. It's his bill. It's his job. It's not mine. And that's what he does. I genuinely don't think he knows what he's doing. I think he's done this his whole life. He wings things, and then there's other people kind of hanging out around him. Financial interests, big groups, BlackRock. I don't think people know how deep BlackRock is. It's so funny. The same conservative talk show hosts that are like, BlackRock. Trump is literally directly working with BlackRock. It's like his administration just promised Larry Fink, the head and CEO of BlackRock, that they will help them buy parts of the Panama Canal. So it's just kind of like the deep state you guys keep talking about, the deep state. I'm sorry, Trump is working directly with that deep state. In fact, he's probably working more directly with that deep state than ever before. Here's the difference, though. He doesn't give a shit if you know or not. The Biden administration did. The Biden administration acted like, no, genocide is bad. We hate killing people. Trump, I will say, what you see is what you get with that guy.
He's not hiding it.
He's not hiding U.S.
Yeah, it's right there for us.
He's not hiding who it is. And in a way, I respect that because I'd much rather know
the enemy
who is wrong here than this other person trying to convince me the whole time that they're on my side, but they're really not.
Yeah, but I think the confusion and the mistake that people are missing is just because we can now see the enemy rather than in hiding, then that we romanticize and idealize the enemy, right? And we can acknowledge that like there is political waste and corruption, and it's highly upheld by the political left and the Democratic Party. And that doesn't mean that some guy who comes in that's like this is somehow different because he's letting it be seen and because he's not holding back,
100%.
And yeah, I mean, there's obviously very dangerous elements that are embedded within Trump's administration. I agree with you. I don't think Donald Trump really knows what he's doing. He said as much in 2016. And, I watched an interview where RFK Jr. even said, he sat down with Trump and asked him, why did you let in all these lobbyists and things of that nature into your first administration? And Trump was like, hey, dude, I didn't know what I was doing yet. I still don't necessarily know he knows what he's doing, but I think he's kind of running on a platform of vengeance, right? And he's angry that he didn't win the 2020 election, whether stolen or not. I really don't give a shit. I don't think it was, but he's so angry and he's running on that platform, and he's just more focused on going after political enemies and power and kind of being upheld. And he'll let whatever interest group or corporate group run through him and pass an agenda with him, because I don't think he's actually entrenched in any real ethical or morals, and this is why it's so funny that he's upheld by the Christian right. The whole thing is a clusterfuck. And I definitely think that us as Jewish and Muslim man are kind of finding ourselves in the middle of an administration that has never, or a country that has never really looked out for us. I am absolutely against Zionism. And I also do think, I got to be honest, I do think it's sad that when Jews were expelled after the Holocaust, right? Like, we tried to go into America, and America wouldn't let a lot of us in. And they just said, like, well, we'll create a Holy Land. And yes, it was created in conjunction with certain Jewish leaders, so we're responsible, but we're finding ourselves battered around, and our trauma and Jewish and unprocessed Jewish safety is being played off of, right, by these administrations to carry out the stuff. And now Palestinians are holding the bag for something that was never theirs to hold. And this just becomes some incredibly insidious, toxic cycle that we've got to all opt out.
You know what is true anti-Semitism to me?
Yeah.
You telling every Jew in the world that they are not safe in their home country where they were born, whether that's America, Canada, France, Germany, I don't care. And that they can only live and they only belong to one country. And if they don't subscribe to that, they're not Jewish enough. I think that is the most anti-Semitic thing you can tell a Jewish person.
Yeah.
And so, look, I think it's nuts. When my parents immigrated to this country, we became American. I was born in America, right? My loyalty, my heart is American. I don't think back to the Middle East like, oh, that's my, don't get me wrong. Yeah, you romanticize your origins, right? Or where you come from. But a lot of the Jews that came after World War II lived 8 or 9 generations in Poland or Germany or Hungary, other places. So it's just kind of like, a lot of that was your ancestry, Your ancestry doesn't have to be from a 2,000-year-old book. It is wherever you want it to be. And so I think that's just what's kind of disgusting is we're having this narrative push that if you don't subscribe to the Israeli version of Judaism, and if you don't support Israel blindly, you're not Jewish, which is just absolute bullshit. How can you define an entire religion with different sects and different, ideologies and say, nope, you guys are all that's you. And you better go live there. And if you don't, you hate Jews and you hate Israel, which that's nuts to me, like, come on.
This is the problem when you integrate politics and religion, and Israel is a political entity at the end of the day that is now interwoven into my Judaism or my connection to Judaism. And it's just, and then Jews are pitted against one another, and it's the whole thing is incredibly fucked up, and I absolutely
incredibly
agree.
Fucked up.
Yeah, I agree with every word you said.
And here's the thing, like, this isn't just for Israel. I'm gonna tell you right now, I think Saudi Arabia, I don't know what Obi-Wan Kenobi says in episode 4. It's when he introduces Luke to, like, that town scene in the bar. He's like, it is like the hive of scum and villainy.
Yeah.
That's literally what I think Saudi Arabia is. I think it's one of the most corrupt. I think Wahhabism is a perversion of Islam, personally. Yeah. And I think it is a disgusting, kind of sadistic. If you see what they did with Jamal Khashoggi, the guy who wanted to blow the whistle on all the bad things that MBS and his monarchy was doing, I think it is a self-indulgent, disgusting government. And I think they only care about themselves. Does that make me anti-Muslim? No, I'm Muslim myself. It just means I think that's a fucked up place in government. So it's just kind of like, we know this, right? We know this logically. I just think it's nuts. You can't criticize a country and its government's actions without being called anti-Semitic. That's bullshit, man. Come on. Like, that's common sense. Trump is a Christian, nationalist. I think what he's...
No, he is.
Yeah, right.
But, not throughout his life.
He'll be whoever is paying him the most. Like, let's be honest. I think he's spewing bullshit. Does that make me anti-Christian? No. It's just, let's bring logic into play, because logic has been thrown out the door.
It's bringing, as you said, it's bringing logic and empathy back, right? And that's, what allows extremism and fundamentalism to occur is this need to play off of people's big emotional reactions, to play off of people's big distortions and not feeling safe, okay? And so when someone doesn't feel safe and they're in fear, you can get them to almost do just about anything.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah, and so this is related to so many of the problems that we're currently facing and experiencing. Look, I'm coming at this from the lens of someone who's been a trauma healer for the last several years. I mean, we need to heal. Like, Jewish people need to heal from the Holocaust. That has not remotely been taking place. And our trauma is being played off of in a way that we are now recreating and normalizing the trauma that we've experienced and projecting it onto another person.
Right.
And we have a world empire that is now using that as a chess piece to move wherever the fuck it can be moved.
Yes.
Okay. And our tax dollars are going to it. And it's just, it's genuinely insane. And so the conversation that we're having, we're basically able to step back and I'm going to be a little egotistical here, look at these things from a little bit of a broader paradigm. And I think, you know, I just see a lot of people who are very confused around what do we do politically? Like, how do we create the world or create the systems and institutions that work for us? It starts first at just like being in tune with yourself and like not buying into these narratives like, oh my, they're coming after us, they're going to do it, right? And being able to sit and stay conscious and stay aware and stay in your logical mind complex and continue to stay in your heart. When I watch like Israeli propaganda or I watch Trump propaganda, like what they do is they dehumanize large sections of people, okay? They take you out of your heart. They take you out of your ability to feel empathy. And I will say this, like that is a major thing that I have seen with Israelis that is scary, genuinely scary for me as a Jewish man. I watch as any ability or capacity to feel empathy for others that fall outside of your own ethnic or religious group is zero. And it is done under the guise of political propaganda. And so, you know, Elon Musk recently said like the downfall of Western civilization is empathy. Like this is, they want us disconnected from this complex. They want us disconnected from our hearts. They want us disconnected from our logical selves because that way we're easier to control. And so there's a lot of bullshit right now. And I think this is why we fucking started this podcast.
Absolutely. You know, a lot of people, I heard this last night at the gala we threw. It's like, what do we do? Believe it or not, you don't have to be Superman. You don't have to start your own podcast. You don't have to.
I mean, we have so many.
Yeah. You don't have to go online, post endless memes. What you have to do is start having conversations with the people around you. It starts locally. It starts right here at home, whether that's family, whether that's someone you never really thought you'd talk to, the other Jewish or Israeli person in the room. Have a conversation with someone different. See their perspectives. Explain yours. Explain logic. That's where we begin. That's how, I'm telling you, in 1 year's worth of time, I think we have shifted 30 years of political ideology for how Israel and Palestine is. Because before October 7th last year, there was really no hard coverage for this stuff at all. But now it is central topic. And Americans actually know to some degree what is going on. And that's not because of legacy media. That's not because of traditional news outlets. That's because of social media, really, right? And so it just makes you think, as horrific as October 7th was, as horrific as all the deaths of the children and the women, there still can be something good that comes out of this. There always is. There can be lasting peace between the Jewish, Muslim, Israeli, Palestinian community at large. And I think that starts even with us here in America, because whether we realize it or not, we have a direct impact on that region. Our policy does. It dictates what happens there. And if we can show solidarity here and common empathy, common human beliefs, whether that is through the dismantlement of Hamas, yes, even them, and the dismantlement of the Netanyahu government, so be it. These are people, these are organizations. They serve their ends to the end, but we need to start thinking about us as a whole, as a majority of people. What is best for us? And I'll tell you right now, the best for us is lasting peace until we find common ground, until we are able to have conversations where we go, I just want to live a normal life and go to work, have a family, and not worry about the extermination of my people or being scared about going to war all the time. I think that's a common ground a lot of us can find, you know, but there's players on both sides. Even Hamas was propped up by the Netanyahu government because they knew it was an extremist group that does not agree with a two-state solution. Whereas the PA Authority at the time, the Palestinian Authority, did. So they wanted someone that believed in their ideology. Right? So,
well, I mean, I'll interject, and I really appreciate your empathy and your understanding in these moments. I mean, I will say over the last year and a half, like from communicating with Palestinians and communicating with Israelis, I think you have to dissolve Israel. And not that Jewish people can't live there, but I think it has to be in collaboration with Palestinians. And I think they ultimately get to decide at this point. And I actually think that's like the restorative justice and rectifying solution, and that's a tough avenue to get to, but these are the bigger things. And yes, it's going to be honest conversations. It's going to be taking hard stances on things that we see within the groups of people that we are connected to ancestrally and from a religious perspective as well. I believe that the world becomes a better place when we start taking ownership and accountability for our actions. Okay. And, just because I've been stating here that trauma is running the Jewish people does not excuse or justify, what we've been doing. And yes, there are bigger complexities and stuff, but nothing excuses or justifies what has gone on for
I
the
agree.
last
I agree
year.
100%.
Yeah.
And
The last 75 years. Yeah.
I'm actually more empathetic. I think, what's important is integration.
Yeah.
Palestinians
100%.
and Jews need to be able to live alongside each other in peace and not worry. I hear a lot of people say, okay, well, the Jews, they have to go back to where they came from. That's easier said than done.
Yeah.
People have lived
Yeah.
there now. People have been,
Yeah.
they've spent, that's all they know, right? I'm not in favor for that. I think what needs to happen is there needs to be no border. You need to unify the country, and it needs to be run by the dominant population. I mean, that's how countries are run, And if the Jewish community wants to pull together and have their say, they can. I mean, that's how politics works. That's how ideology works. But at the end of the day, to act like there's not humans that exist on the other line of that border and that wall is not a way to keep moving, because it keeps your country repressed, keeps their country repressed too, wherever they are. And so I know we live in a fairy tale version, you and I do, of course, where things can go right. But I think what's more important than ever right now is ending the genocide and then allowing, because I've heard this a lot. I've heard, well, we gave the Palestinians Gaza, and what have they done with it? Well, the truth is, there's still, before October 7th, there's blockade of common goods, chips, cookies, chocolates, basic building tools, even people that want to be innovative, even people that want to just better society have been blocked from doing that, because there's an ultimate goal, political goal. Hopefully they give up and leave, and then we can slowly move in there. But that's not right. It's just kind of like the reason why things haven't gone as great there is because Israel has blocked a lot of common goods. They control the electricity. They control the water supply. They control trade relations. They control the trade routes for Palestine. So it's not really a sovereign country. It's not a country that had the autonomy to be who it wants to be, to do what it wants to do. And so a lot of people think Palestine is just existing over there going, oh, I hate them. That's not really what was going on. What was going on is you had a country that's occupied and that's repressed. And any people that are repressed will come to resent those that are oppressing them. That is common human emotion. And so what you're talking about specifically, the psychological phenomena of displacement, and I think this is such a sad, sad reality. What the German Nazis did to the Jewish people was horrific, but no Palestinian had anything to do with that Holocaust. Not a single one. And you are seeing those emotions, instead of being put on Germany, go straight on to Palestinians. Because before 1949, Palestinians and Jews lived in total peace in Palestine. There was no widespread war. There was no get the Jews out of Palestine. There was nothing like that until Europe, specifically England, decided, let's move all the Jews and tell them you have to live there. Which to me is actually the most anti-Semitic, racist thing you can do, is tell Jews that have only known Europe their whole life, only known one country, that, hey, you don't belong here, get out. It's as if someone came to you and me right now and said, hey, you're not American, get the hell out, go back to the Middle East, a place where you don't even speak the native tongue anymore, and go live there. That blows my mind, But what's crazy to me is people don't see it that way. People see it as, oh, this is the only place I can be and be safe.
This is why I think an understanding around trauma and, I call it young in-depth psychology, but psychology at large is really important here, because we're watching certain like abuse dynamics that play out in certain home environments. We're watching it now play out on the world stage between groups of people. And so it's very common and normal that when someone experiences trauma from a person, right, they will go and then carry out that trauma on another. The one who was abused will become the abuser, because that's the way that the psyche normalizes it and makes it okay, and and allows a human to function when they don't feel like they can reconcile and heal it.
Right.
And so what we have is we have Western powers playing off that paradigm and dynamic, you know, and not only that, but enabling it. Like, you know, America is the narcissistic parent enabling like Israel to carry out their trauma onto another. But this is the most horrific way. This isn't just a simple like brother beating up brother. Like this, you're murdering children. Like the only way that that happens if you are in some prolonged psychosis where you're no longer connected to any sense or form of empathy at all anymore, right? And that happens when we've been through a very severe fracturing and trauma. Like this is what is occurring. You know, Western powers have never allowed Arab sovereignty. We drew lines on a map for you guys, and Gaza and Palestinians got the shortest end of the stick. And it's so funny for me that the most difficult problem I have, whether it's talking to other Jewish people sometimes, not always, right, but other Jewish people sometimes, or Christian Zionists and nationalists, is I hear the same narratives said about Palestinians that used to be said about us, you know? Like when we talk about like Palestinian displacement, you know, it's always like no one else wants them. Yeah, well, and I hear Jewish people say, I'm like, that's what was said about us, that no one else wanted to take us in, which meant that we were allowed to be genocided and cleansed out of areas, you know, and that justified it. And so you're just watching this. It's eerie to me to watch the things that used to be said and projected onto us, for us to just loosely project it onto Palestinians and even the Arab community at large, and not see what's occurring. Understand the dynamics behind the how and the why, but it's still shocking and perplexing.
It is. It really is shocking. And, you know, it's just kind of like, to pick on a point you said, a lot of people don't know. I hear about this. I hear this racism all the time. I'll look at the Arab countries. In fact, some of them are pretty well developed now. Dubai, especially. They're just awful. They're animals. Well, I'm going to remind you something. America, in tandem with Israel since 1948, has decided who the government of pretty much every major country from Jordan to Egypt is. And if they don't like who gets elected democratically, they kill them, or they oust them, or they jail them. So in a way, and I always bring this back to America, because I hear a lot of anti-Arab, a lot of anti-Muslim rhetoric. If you want Muslims to stop coming to your countries, European countries, Western countries, whether that's England, Germany, America, stop destroying their country.
Yeah.
Stop picking their governments as tyrants, and maybe they'll stop coming. It's common sense. It's not like rocket science. Yeah. Why are they wanting to come? Conditions are unbearable there. Why are they unbearable? The government is corrupt. Who picked the government? The American government. It's common sense. Yeah, I'm sorry. Honestly, monarchies? Who still has legitimate monarchies? Think about that. Yeah, there's fake monarchies, right? Like the one of England. It's just more for show. Yeah. But the one in Jordan, the one in Saudi Arabia, the one in these countries, they still function as very real monarchies. Like something you'd see from the medieval ages. Who decided that these people were going to be in charge? It literally was England. This is a very important history lesson that I never learned about. And I took AP World History. I took AP American Government and AP History, American History. I never heard about any of this. I took history classes in college too, and I never heard anything about this. But during World War II and World War I, England made a direct pact with separatist Arab groups in the region to help overthrow the Ottoman Empire, Turkey, who at the time was in charge of the Middle East. It let people retain their native tongue. They let people do whatever they want. They had local governments. I guess the Turkish would just collect a tax, kind of like how England was doing to America. And they made a pact that helped us overthrow the Ottoman Empire, and then we'll put you guys in charge. So they did. The Arabs, the local Arab separatist groups, allied with Britain, overthrew the Ottoman Empire, was defeated around somewhere between World War I, World War II. And after that, everything was kind of in limbo. Yeah. The plan for Israel was decided in England. And then they came to the drawing board and said, this will be Jordan, this will be Egypt, this will be Saudi Arabia, this will be that. And you're in charge, you're in charge, you're in charge. No one picked who it was. No one decided democratically or population-wise. It was whoever's going to go along with our plan. Unfortunately, if anyone is of ethical principle, they're probably not going to go along with the plan to just rule to rule. So the people that are put in charge are unethical, tyrants, ruthless, brutal dictators who will do anything to retain their power, their family name, their money, and that's who's run these countries for the last 50 years. So before I hear any criticism about the Arab world or about Islam, I just want you to know what you're seeing in the Middle East is a direct result of British and American foreign policy with Israel in tandem, destroying these countries time and time again after a period of time. And not only was it there, it bled out to other countries. It's bled out to the greater Middle East, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, Iraq was destroyed completely. Syria destroyed completely. And it's just Libya destroyed completely. And it's like, who did that? Who decided that? America did. Whether you want to realize it or not, I think the biggest revelation of the last 2 years is we're not the good guy.
Well, I think, what you're experiencing and what you're describing is basically like Arab nations have become the scapegoat, and it's interesting because that's the role that we used to play as Jewish people, and it's, it's like, you guys are getting punched by like Western imperialist forces, and then we're being like, oh, why'd you punch yourself? Huh? And it's this ultimate gaslighting. I think what's obviously, and you said it, like and I think we actually start wrapping up, but like what's happened and occurred over the last year and a half, it's 5 years in general, and beyond that is horrific and terrible. But you do see this collective pushback that we're not going to accept that Palestinians and Arab nations in general are going to be the world scapegoat. Not at all. And that there's going to be no more silencing your voice. I mean, from my own reading and learning, like Palestinian experience was still relayed through an Israeli lens for the last 76 years. Like the microphone was taken away completely off of an entire people whose land was settled without their consent. And so, this is why I am optimistic. I mean, we've been producing a lot of fear, but this is why I am optimistic of things going forward, is because I do like that we're starting to put the microphone back in the appropriate hands and center the correct voices.
I think that's a great place to stop. Great first conversation. I think very poignant, very needed at this point in time. We'll keep having these conversations every 2 weeks.
So we are going to wrap up.
Episode 1 in the books, right? So
episode 1 books.